Welcome back to That Dad Guy. It's July 16th, 2022, and today we're answering your questions. We're answering your 2 questions because that's all that was posted. So it may be a short video, it may not be a short video. There is one question that is kind of more of a personal how I do things question, and the second one is more of a history question. So the history question is going to take a little longer, so I'm going to leave that one to second, even though it was the first question in. So yeah, let's get started, and don't forget, leave questions at the end. So when you finish watching this video, or watching as much of this video as you get through, leave me a comment. It's always nice to hear that you liked it and things like that, but if you leave a comment that has a question, then I can get to it again next week and these videos can continue. So the first question that I'm going to answer comes from Basil, and he's in India, and he says, how do you plan your weekend? Is it determined on the elements outside, like the weather or your mood patterns? Well, usually every weekend there's a few things that have to get done. So I make some videos. Those I have planned for the weekend. Sunday, of course, is the day that I write my postcards. So that happens on Sunday, and I do a video about that. Sometimes I show you all the postcards I send out. Sometimes I don't. Depends on what I'm doing. Also, we get groceries on the weekend, so we're going to fill the cupboards and the fridge back up again. So I've got meals to plan for the upcoming week. That happens. If it's really nice out, I try to go for a walk somewhere. Lately, if there's a festival or something happening on the weekend, I like to try to get out to that, to film it, to show you guys what events are happening in Atlantic Canada on the weekend, especially in the Moncton area. For example, today is the last day of the Inspire Festival. So if I get a chance, I'm going to go and do something about that. I'm not sure if I will, but it's something different. Last week, you got to see the Lobster Festival. You got to see the Atlantic Nationals car show. And so I try to get some of those things in. On the weekend too, depending on what my kids are doing. Maybe we've got some family time, something we can do, go see a movie, or I don't know. Yes, to answer your question, sometimes it's weather related. So if it's nice out, we want to take advantage of being outside. If it's rainy and dreary, then we just want to get some of the chores done. There's always things that need to be cleaned or decluttered, things that are going on with my parents and helping out in that situation too. So that's how I plan my weekend. Hope that answers your question. And not every weekend is super exciting. Sometimes it's just, let's just watch some TV, get some groceries, and do next to nothing. Other weekends like this one, I had friends that were in town from Montreal, so last night I got to spend time with them, so that was fantastic. And then the rest of this weekend is looking like it's going to be nice, so hopefully we'll get to do some things outside. That's the plan anyways. All right, let's get to question number 2, and it comes from Sweden, and it says, thanks for your videos. Could you please explain the difference between a province and a territory? When she first learned about Canada, there was only the Northwest Territories, if she remembers correctly. I'm thinking she doesn't remember correctly, because unless she learned about Canada in 1870, we had at least 2 territories when she was doing her education. And now there are more territories, she says. Yes, there are. There are 3 territories in Canada. And she hasn't understood the difference. All right, so let's give you the simplistic version of it, and then we're going to give you a bit of a history of Canada. I guess that's where I want to go with this question, and hopefully you'll enjoy the answer. So the simplistic version is provinces, which we have 10 of, have a lot more power in deciding how they're going to run things. They have their own school systems, they have their own health care, and the province determines how those boards are going to run. In our territories, the federal government determines how they're going to do their education, their infrastructure, all that stuff is all determined by the federal government. They don't have the autonomy to do it themselves, and that's largely due to the population. The territories are very scarcely populated, and so they don't have as much power to determine how they're going to run things themselves. So that's the simplistic version of what it is. A province has more power than a territory. Why do we have the difference? Let's get into that a little bit while we do that. So let's go back in history a bit. We know that maybe, or you may know, that in 1867 is when Canada first became a country. But before that, we were just colonies of the British Empire, and we were called British North America. So you had the United States that got their independence in 1776, and then Canada still existed above, which was basically New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and then you had Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland, and then you had Upper and Lower Canada, which became the Canada provinces, or Quebec and Ontario, which they are determined now. And then you had Rupert's Land, which was independent property of the Hudson Bay Company. So that's a lot of territory that we had all across the country, all the way to British Columbia. And so when the Americans had their Civil War in the 1860s, Britain started to look at it and looked at the territories that were left where they had control, and started to get a little worried that after the American Revolution, there was talk about manifest destiny in the US, and they thought maybe the Americans would try to come up and annex what is now Canada and the region. And so they wanted to put more control into that area and give them some more power, and also so they wouldn't have to come over and try to defend the area as much if we were kind of an independent nation. So British North America, in 1864, we started to talk about, okay, we need more power, more of a constitution in our area and become autonomous a little bit. And the areas of Upper and Lower Canada, Quebec and Ontario, which became the province of Canada, they started to have more population and more growth, but didn't have really that connection to the Atlantic Ocean. So they wanted to get the Atlantic provinces or the Atlantic territories involved. So in 1864, they started a whole bunch of discussions. They went to Charlottetown, they went to Quebec City, and they went to London to try to talk about confederation. They went to Charlottetown because the people in Prince Edward Island said, we're not going anywhere unless you come here. They really didn't want to be part of this new nation called Canada, but the talk started there. New Brunswick and Nova Scotia down here in Atlantic Canada too, we were kind of less wanting to become part of Canada as this new nation. But in 1867, the province of Quebec and Ontario and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, we all joined and we became Canada. Prince Edward Island didn't join in 1867. So they actually didn't join for 6 more years. I think 1873, Prince Edward Island joined Canada, and they did it because they had a railway in PEI at the time. PEI is a very small province. I'll show you a map of Canada and where Prince Edward Island is here in a minute. I'm not even going to wait a minute. I'm going to show you right now. So here is Canada as a whole, as it stands right now. So what we're talking about here is Ontario. Here is Quebec as it stands now, and Labrador, which is part of Newfoundland. And then here is New Brunswick, where I live. And this is Nova Scotia. And this little island right here is Prince Edward Island. So it is not very big. It has a population of just over 100,000. Not a lot of people in comparison. Say New Brunswick has 900,000, and Nova Scotia has, I think, let's say 1.2 million. Where Quebec, the city of Montreal by itself is about 2 million people, and then the rest. So it's got a large population. Ontario is even bigger than that because Toronto is about 5 or 6 million people in Toronto, and then you've got all sorts of other larger cities. And then you go across. So you've got Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. And then sitting on top of that, you have the territory of Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. And that takes you right up until the Arctic Circle of the Canadian provinces. All right, so you got that in your mind, where everything's situated in Canada. This is the area right here. This was Upper Canada. This was Lower Canada, just this section here. So Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, that's what became Canada in 1867. All of this territory up here was Rupert's Land, owned by the Hudson's Bay Company. This is the Hudson's Bay. So it's a private company, and you still can see those stores in Canada now, but they used to be very prevalent in fur trading and that sort of stuff. Now that you've got the map memorized into your head, you can kind of see the layout of how Canada goes, and you can see how small Prince Edward Island is. even though it is today a province, and that became a province in 1873. And they only really became a province because they had a railway on that little tiny island, and they were super in debt as a result of it. So Canada said, if you would join our country, we'll take care of the debt. And so that's what they did. They became a province in 1873, and Canada assumed the debt of the railway. And today, there is no railway in Prince Edward Island. So not only did they become part of Canada, but they lost the railway in the long run. That's kind of part of our history. We have a history of changes, and yeah, we're proud to be who we are, but we have made mistakes along the way. And we're going to get into some of those mistakes right now, because they're not pretty. Really, when you look at it, they're not pretty. So now we got this country. It's a burgeoning country. We've got New Brunswick, we've got Prince Edward Island, we've got Nova Scotia, and then we got Quebec and Ontario that are starting. But we still have this whole area that's called Rupert's Land that's owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, and it takes us all the way to the west coast. So when Canada became a country in 1867, one of the things that they didn't do is they didn't invite the Indigenous people to come to the table in Charlottetown or Quebec City. Even though they had an agreement, a nation-to-nation agreement for things, they were kind of excluded. The fathers of Confederation were not kind to the Indigenous people, let's just say. And so we started off on the wrong foot. Definitely started off on the wrong foot. We had a whole bunch of treaties starting in 1763 with the Indigenous people that kind of protected some of their rights, and some promises that we made along the way. In 1870, just before Prince Edward Island came in, Canada bought Rupert's Land. So got it from the Hudson's Bay Company, so they took over that whole influence of the northern part, which takes you to northern Quebec, takes over Labrador, goes all the way around the Hudson's Bay, up across northern Canada through those territories. And so what the federal government did was they signed 11 treaties between 1871 and 1921 with the Indigenous people, and basically promised them money and rights about their lands and concessions. And in exchange, we got to keep all their territories. So you give us all your land and we'll help you out and get you established, was basically what we said. And we didn't really follow through with a lot of that. And that was everything up except for the territory, which is British Columbia. That didn't come till later. So Canada got all that land, and the Indigenous people really didn't get much in return. So that's kind of where you go from there. Let me just flip through to a few dates just so you might get an idea. When you talk about the territories, I said 1870 is when the Northwest Territories became part of Canada. In 1898, the Yukon, which is right above British Columbia, became a territory. And then in 1999, none of it. So those are the three. None of it means our land in the indigenous language of the area. So those are the three territories that we have. One of the reasons why Canada really wanted to become a nation and expand as quickly as possible, when the United States purchased Alaska, there was a divide between continental US and Alaska, and what was in the way was British Columbia and the Yukon to connect those. So Canada was like, whoa, all of this is ours. And so speedily they went through, made purchases, got Hudson's Bay's territory, got the Indigenous land, and eventually got British Columbia as well. British Columbia became a province in 1871. So it became a province before little Prince Edward Island did. So you kind of had this one little area that were all provinces, and then a big zone in between, and then British Columbia on the Pacific coast. So if we look at it, Manitoba was in 1870. I'm going to read off some dates here because I don't have them memorized. Alberta, which is between Saskatchewan and British Columbia, 1905, didn't come in. So we had a zone where in British Columbia was 1871 and Manitoba was 1870, and then Saskatchewan was 1905, and Alberta 1905. So there was a gap in between where if you went up from Montana or someplace like that, you could have gotten through between Canada. So we had a whole bunch of different comes. And the last one, of course, to join Confederation was Newfoundland here on the West Coast. They stayed all by themselves for a long time, or on the East Coast, sorry, out in the Atlantic. They didn't join Confederation until 1949 after the Second World War was done. They came in to make Canada complete. And then, like I said, the last territory was just created in 1999, which they took part of the Northwest Territories and cut it off in half. Not quite in half, but they cut the eastern portion of the Northwest Territories and they created none of it. So that is how Canada really became to be. We didn't have a civil war. We weren't saying as a people we need to have our independence from Britain. Really, it was Britain looking at the map and saying, the United States of America is expanding quickly, and we think what they're going to try to do is expand and try to take all North America. So in order to stop that, we need to create a country that's independent from us and has their own autonomy. And so when you talk to the people of what is now Canada, we said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And some of the provinces along the way took a little longer to convince, but it was the threat of being invaded that created or gave us the need of becoming a country. And if we go back to the initial question, why do we have territories versus provinces? The provinces are where all the population is. Along the American border, usually 80% of Canadians live along the US border, and that's where the town is. As you get further north and it gets colder and climate is harsher, there's not as many people. And in the territories where it's mostly Aboriginal people that live, it was just federal government was taking care of that area. So we weren't giving them the autonomy that they deserved to make their own decisions. And those are mistakes. Yeah, every country has them. We've got them. So there is the short version at the beginning to answer your question, and at the end there's the long version of some of our sordid history of how we became a country created out of fear of being swallowed up by our neighbor to the south, a country that expanded based on large purchases from an individual company and for broken promises to our Indigenous people, that saying we would do one thing but never really following through with that. Whether there was ever any intention to follow through, I don't know. And if you look at residential schools and all the problems that have come up in recent years and things that have been discovered, there's been some nasty history in there. And there's no way really to say we're sorry for that. It is what it is. It's history, and all of our countries around the world have bad points to history, and we try to not talk about those. We talk about how polite we are in Canada, or how nice we might be. But sometimes we're not nice to our own people. And so, yeah, that we have to say we're sorry, and we have to do better going forward, and treat everyone as equals, whether it's by race, by religion, by color, whatever have you. Here you gotta know that everyone's equal, everyone has a voice, everyone has a right. And that might be a far-flung answer from where this original question came from, but I felt it when I read the question. It's like, if you really want to know the difference between a territory and a province, let's find out why we have territories and provinces and how this country became to be what it is. And why aren't those three territories provinces now, to this date? Why couldn't we switch? I know constitutionally we'd have to make an amendment, but why don't we do that? Why don't we give them the independence to do it? Is it because they don't have as much economic power to make those choices? And if that's the case, what can we do to fix that? All right, so leave me questions, whether you've got more questions now than you had before because you've heard the ramblings of this little bit of a history. Great, go for it. If maybe your question is about something completely different, I don't mind. Let's see what next week's topics are going to be, so we know how we're going to go forward. this being part 24, next week is our part 25. So I hope we've got some good fun questions for it. And I'm going to go off and enjoy the rest of my day. So hopefully you guys will too. Stay safe. What, Polo? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends?
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?